ओम पवित्रं चरितं यस्याः पवित्रं जीवनं तथा पवित्रता स्वरूपिण्यै तस्यै कुर्मो नमो नमः। या देवी सर्वभूतेषु श्रद्धारूपेण संस्थिता नमस्तस्यै 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 नमो नमः। Salutations at the holy feet of Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Mata Sri Sharada Devi and Srimad Swami Vivekananda Ji. My respects to Professor K.C. Sharma Ji, Honorable Director of Sambrama Academy of Management Studies, Bangalore. My respects to Professor Vittal Poddar, Senior Research Assistant, the Mythic Society of India, Bangalore. My respects to Shri Imrapurji, Regional Director, IGNO, Bangalore. And my love and good wishes to all the participants who have taken part in today's webinar. Dr. Mishra Ji is a very good devotee of Ramakrishna movement. I recall my association with Dr. Mishra Ji when he headed the management sector of Sri Siddhartha Institute of Engineering and Technology in Tumkur, founded by a great visionary, a educationalist, late Dr. H.M. Gangadharaya. I happen to be the alumni of this institution. I had an opportunity to get an invitation from Dr. Mishra Ji while he was director here, when he conducted a colloquium on Mahatma Gandhi's life and teachings. It was an excellent program where we had more than 1,200 management students from different colleges of Karnataka. That was an excellent event in Tumkur, I must say. Later on, I had many more invitations offered to me by Dr. Mishra Ji in his college, and I was very much happy to address the students on the subject from boardroom to battlefield, a very interesting management subject in those days. And after he went to Bangalore to serve Sambrama Institute, there also I was invited once to address an international conference where I could find students from more than 14 countries participating in that very meaningful program. So very frequently we interact, and Professor Mishra Ji had this desire of conducting one international conference, and when he asked me for a very apt title of my subject, immediately I said, the higher education as it is versus as it should be in Indian scenario today. He appreciated the topic, and finally, we are at a very important stage on this occasion to discuss some burning issues with regard to this topic. My dear friends, education, according to Swami Vivekananda, is the only panacea for all human problems. Sanatana Parampara describes education, Vidya, as Savidya ya Vimuktayet. That learning which can eradicate the darkness completely, which makes man the true personification of knowledge and wisdom, is education. Our great motherland, Bharat, has clearly influenced the world with its power of knowledge and wisdom. Even though the country was known for its richness, its wealth, prosperity, natural resources, if you consider the past history for the past, say, 5,000 years, and when we go through the records of the great historians, the great visitors from outside, invariably we come across their utterances that India is a land of light, is a land of knowledge and wisdom. Indian philosophers, scientists, Indian educationalists, Indian teachers were of international reputation. The greatest reason to define the word Bharat, which means the land of light. Before entering to the topic directly, I want to quote two utterances of a very renowned historian of the world, Will Durant. The first quote is like this: millions have tried their best to reintegrate the human personalities. The greatest revolution in human history is enlightenment of life, enlightenment of mind, and improvement of character. The greatest revolutionaries are philosophers and saints. This speaks about the reason, the real reason behind India's survival in spite of more than 68 invasions from outside. And at the same time, India not at all waging a single war against the neighboring countries. That speaks about the strength of our culture, the deep-rootedness of our faith in depending upon knowledge and wisdom for the sustainability, for the survival, and for marching towards the greater life ideal of the human race at large. The second utterance of Will Durant goes like this: perhaps in return for conquest, arrogance, and exploitation, India will teach us the tolerance and gentleness of mature mind and quiet content of inquisitive soul, the calm of the understanding spirit, and a unifying love for all beings. I think these two sentences will shed light on us, all of us, how India has got an eternal responsibility in the world history to teach lesson to rest of the world, to shed light on rest of the countries, to make them to know what exactly the purpose of human life, the real meaning of the word education, so on and so forth. As we all know, man enjoys his intellect more than an animal enjoying the senses. Vidyanama narasya rupam adhikam prachanna guptam dhanam. Vidya bhogakari yashas sukhakari vidya gurunam guruhu. Vidya bandhujane videshagamane vidya para devata vidya rajasu pujyate vidya rajasu pujyate natu dhanam vidya vihinaha pashuhu. This is a great verse of Raja Bhartruhari. He was in 6th century AD, say 2 centuries before Sri Shankaracharya. Perhaps the best message about education we find in the utterances of Raja Bhartruhari. Vidya Gurunam Guruhu. That is an eternal message to all our teachers. Teacher is not an individual, rather he is an institution. Teacher is an institution. Vidya vihinaha pashuhu. There comes the difference. The difference between man and animal lies with respect to the aspect of education. Man differs from animal in all his capacity to acquire knowledge, and without knowledge there is no difference between man and animal, is the essence of the utterance of Raja Bhartruhari. And we come across another great saying of the rishis, Swadeshe pujyate rajaha vidwan sarvatra pujyate. A king is respected and honored only in his kingdom. Rather, an intellect, an educated man, a learned person is honored everywhere in the nook and corner of the world. This is the firm belief of ancient Indians. As we all know, the civilization begins with an order, grows with liberty, and dies with chaos. Civilization has got its own limitation. Even though it has an order in the beginning and it entertains liberty, finally, the end of civilization is very miserable. The reason is very simple. Unless and until civilization is backed up, is supported by the universal truths. If civilization is confined itself only to the ethnic values, since the ethnic values are not universal in their outlook, civilization cannot survive. That's why the ancient education system of India, beautifully defined, it really warned the humanity to respectably accept, assimilate, and digest the great aspects of education. What is that? As Chandogya Upanishad says, Yadeva vidyaya karoti shraddhaya upanishada tadeva viryavattaram bhavati. When any part of our responsibility, any of our duties and responsibilities are rendered with knowledge, with conviction, and with meditation, then alone we will achieve the maximum energy and maximum efficiency. These are the greatest truths propounded by Upanishads with regard to the real meaning of the word education. Taittiriya Upanishad has recorded a chapter called Acharyopadesha, perhaps the first convocation address in human history, which is excellent. It has a greatest amount of the message for every individual and society that is applicable and very much necessary for the fulfillment of life in its truest sense. It goes like this. Vedamanuchacharyonte vasinamanushasti satyam vada dharmanchara. See the first two sentences. Satyam vada dharmanchara swadhyayan ma pramadaha. Never neglect learning every day. You cannot neglect learning every day. Acharyaya priyam dhanamahritya prajatantum mam vyavachetsi satyanna pramaditavyam dharmanna pramaditavyam kushalanna pramaditavyam. It is a beautiful verse. It goes like this, and finally it says swadhyaya pravachanabhyam na pramaditavyam. That means do not be careless about learning and teaching. Every individual has to learn every day, and whatever he has learned, he must convey to others what he has learned to the best of his ability. Here it is very clear that the goal of civilization, the goal of evolution in human, was not confined to any organic satisfaction, was not confined to any numerical increase, and was not merely confined to the organic survival as such. So India, it was a very rich country in 14th and 15th century AD. 40% of the total exports of the world was from India. And even still going back to the previous centuries, 1000 years back, India has it had the greatest universities. And people from many of the Eastern countries and Middle East, they used to come to pursue their education in India. Records reveal that people from more than 20 countries used to come and study in Indian universities. But as we all know, because of the historical reasons, the invasion that took place in Indian history, it has damaged India in very many aspects. And this damage was not just the physical damage of the structures of Indian society. They destroyed the universities. They burnt the valuable books of the universities. And this was very much seen from outside. But more dangerous was the people who occupied India after winning over Indians in their wars. They did not give an iota of provision for the survival and continuation of ancient Indian education system. When we study the history, after the establishment of East India Company, within a span of 8-10 years, more than 20,000 Gurukula system of schools teaching Sanskrit and Indian Vedanta were closed down in Bengal. The encouragement to learn Sanskrit came to an end. The foreign administration did not allow the Gurukula system of education to pursue Sanskrit learning anymore. Not only that, any text, any great book defining the greatest achievements of India were not entertained. Not only that, they were burnt into ashes. These are the things which have been recorded by the foreign visitors, not the natives, I must say. So this speaks about damaging the great culture of India in two aspects. Number one, damaging the existing universities and the education system, and discouraging the system not to continue anymore. So this was the greatest setback, the worst setback, I must say, for the downfall of education system in India. Swami Vivekananda, the great monk of India,
He was a wandering monk in the country for more than 7.5 years before he went to America. After observing the scenario of his motherland in those days, way back to 1892, in one of his letters, he wrote to his brother monk, defining the prevailing system of his country in those days. The present day education system in India is merely and entirely a negative education system, the products of which are the people who are next door neighbors to brutes. We had come across great values of family and society in earlier system of education like this: Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Atithi Devo Bhava, Janani Janma Bhumischa Swargadapi Gariyasi, Kuputro Jayeta Kvachitapi Kumata na Bhavati, so on and so forth. But the British education system, they taught Indian children in a different way, in exactly the opposite way. By the time the child completes 16 years of education, he will be just a bundle of organic flesh. The first lesson he was taught in the school was, "Your father is a fool." Second sentence was, "Your grandfather is a lunatic." The third lesson was, "Your teacher is a hypocrite." Fourth was, "All your books, the religious and spiritual books, are lies." You just imagine what India taught earlier and what the British education system taught in later centuries. See, this type of education system, somehow, it reduced this education from the peak, Savidya Ya Vimuktayet, from that level to the level of literacy. Even today, after 7 decades after our independence, the problems pertaining to our universities are growing day by day. Today, our universities are no more a ray of hope in the process of bringing up of the country. You see, every university has got very unhealthy, very most unexpected, uninvited problems. And you come across the anti-national activities, the leftist activities, the Naxalite activities, the anti-social activities in majority of the universities. A cine actor or an actress going to a university, addressing the children to rebel against the system that is prevailing. If anybody speaks about the nationality, they want to analyze the aspect in the light of pseudo-secular. See, this is the pathetic condition we are observing in the universities. Universities are no more the house of knowledge in our country. We have more than 900 universities, yes. But even after 7 decades of our independence, I feel we have not yet started the true education that will aim for man-making, character building, and nation building aspect that is very much needed for a democratic country like India. We have an excellent constitution. We fought for our independence for more than 3.5 centuries. Lakhs and lakhs of people sacrificed their lives for our independence movement. And today, in spite of acquiring independence, somehow this slavish mentality is continuing even today. Till date, it is continuing. When you take Bhagavad Gita, when you go through the works of Charaka, Sushruta, the great utterances of Chanukya, the great works of Sri Shankaracharya, the books like Viveka Chudamani, Atma Bodha, the great text titled Panchadashi by Vidyaranya Maharshi. Such great books, our children are not at all aware of that. Our children are more aware of the books, how to successfully conduct suicide. The books from the West. When you question our children of the universities, they quote more number of foreign authors. They are very, very ignorant. They are neglecting the great works of their own motherland. And we have reached a stage where I can convince Indian youth easily by referring to a text authored by a Westerner rather than my own native author. Why is this due to? This is out and out slavish mentality that is prevailing in our universities and education system in toto. My dear friends, you don't get any other country equal to India which went in search of truth in every aspect of human life. Whether it is spiritual or secular, our country gave more importance for the aspect of truth. That is why Swami Vivekananda, while inviting Sister Nivedita to India to serve the purpose of education to the women of the country, he beautifully writes, Margaret, anything that of Indian origin, please accept and then verify. But anything that of Western origin, first verify and then accept. See, these are the words of Vivekananda. And to support his statement, I can quote you hundreds and thousands of examples. Upon invitation, I have traveled in 10 countries for more than half a dozen times with Swami Nirbhayanandaji Maharaj, another great orator. My dear friends, we have addressed in very many universities in the West, of course in the East too. When we go to the universities, the heads of different departments, they are very proud to say, Swami, every university has got an Indian at least in the first 4 or 5 places of our rank list. The children from India who are pursuing their education in our universities, they have better places than the native children of the country. The intelligentsia has gone outside the country. The present governing system of the country, of course, fortunately, Shri Narendra Modi ji, he has taken a very tough stand to go for the education system that is very much needed for our country in particular. More than teaching our country about the greatness of other countries, the achievements of our countries, the first and the foremost thing what we have to do is to make our children to feel proud about their own country by making them to know the real history, the real achievement of our ancestors. The new education policy is a revolution today because now we have slowly started teaching our children about the true history of our country. Unless and until we make our children to know about our own history, with whatever the education system we have adopted from the day of independence, more or less our graduates used to behave as if they are refugees in their own country. And when you question 100 youths who are coming out of our universities, 70 to 80% of the students say, sooner I want to get out of the country, go to America, Germany, Australia, England, or even Africa, and settle down and work for the country. If you ask them, why are you leaving your country? Do you know the reply? They say one or two sentences like this. We cannot grow in this country, number one. Second one, the country is not upholding merit here. It is disgracing merit. It is belittling merit. And many of the students say, this country is not good. And we cannot survive here. We want to go out. And my words may be bit sharp, but this is the utterance of majority of the students coming out of our universities. My simple and straight question to all our professors working in the universities is this: did you teach them the subject properly? Whatever the grace marks you gave has brought disgracefulness to my country. All your system of education, whether it is the education, whether it is distant education, somehow we have reduced our education system to the level of literacy program. Intelligentsia is going out. We have not developed patriotism in the minds of our children. We made them to score 90 out of 100, 95 out of 100 in civics, and they lack civic sense. Yesterday I read in Kannada newspapers, more than 1 lakh BPL calls were cancelled because they were found fault. Such a cheating took place in the state of Karnataka in particular, because I am referring to yesterday's newspaper. 1 lakh BPL calls were cancelled because they were illegal and unethical. You just imagine, out of 1 lakh calls, you will have more than 60 to 70% of the calls belonging to the literates. The literates have developed themselves into cheaters. Literates are cheaters today, more or less. And we cannot trust this statement that education will solve all the problems of the society and human individually. Because the so-called literates of the society have become spoil sports in the scenario. This is very unfortunate. And almost 35 years back, one chief minister in Karnataka, whom the people adore as a very good social worker who went to the doorstep of a common man to serve him, in one of his election canvass meetings, he was questioning, he was dare enough to throw a challenge to the educational sector of the society. Oh, my dear people who are educated, even though you don't vote my party, these were the words of the chief minister who was in power in late 70s in Karnataka. In my own ears, I have heard, oh educateds, oh people of learning sector, even getting a single vote from your strata, I know how to win the elections. I know where exactly my votes are. I can concentrate such packets to win over the elections. Can you imagine the sitting chief minister of a state uttering such words, which is no doubt nonsense? Do you think, does it mean sense? It may sense a little telling the educators that the democracy of our country can ignore the learned section of the society. The present democratic system prevailing in the country doesn't want the support of the learned sector to run the government. And in middle 80s in Karnataka, one education minister in Vidhana Saudha, in this session, he clearly declared that education department is non-productive. On one side, you quote Mahatma Gandhi and say, Gandhi said education is for man-making. On another side, you quote Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, that the future of the country is built within four walls of the classroom. On another side, we speak about Savidyaya Vimuktayet. On another side, we say, Vivekananda said education is the only panacea. But you see the foolishness of this education minister, who is without any hesitation declaring that education department is non-productive. In a democratic country, a chief minister, an education minister, with these utterances, they not only belittled the educational sector of the society, at the same time, they can misuse the innocent, uneducated section of the society in their own way. See, I spoke some of the important aspects of ancient Indian education system. Later on, the education system that was introduced by the British, and even in brief, the education system that is prevailing in universities of our country today. What exactly we need today, what it should be. And this higher education, it includes engineering, medical, paramedical courses, pure science, commerce, arts, so many sectors. After second PU, even a science student in PUC can pursue in more than 45 to 50 different courses to have his degree education, the bachelor education I mean. Upon invitation, I go to different places of the state and the country to guide the children about what should be their option after the second PU, after the pre-university education. Today, we have more or less forgotten all the ethics of the professions. Even the medical profession says the doctor is not supposed to write his name bigger than the specified size of the letters. But that has been conveniently neglected today. You will have huge boards, the flexes, the advertisements in every city about the hospitals, about the doctors. They have become the publicity agencies more or less. And it is said, a doctor is not only entrusted with the responsibility of the physical health of the patient, he is equally responsible for the ethical health of the society. But today's education, if you pay 1 crore rupee, 2 crore rupees for your post-graduation medical education, definitely will pass. The management will take care of you and it will see that you will never fail. You will pass, you will have a certificate and you will enter into the society to serve the society. Only God knows to what extent ethically you can serve the society. The doctors in the society, they have reduced themselves to the level of technicians today. More than their experience, they believe the readings of the machines in judging the health of the patient. See, these are the few examples which very clearly give us an idea about the decline in the ethical system of our education today in the country. Even you take the engineering sector, there also the system is horrible. System is horrible. The structures built, neglecting the quality, neglecting the pattern to be followed. Ultimately, you see the collapse of buildings here and there. So many people losing their lives, their children becoming orphans on the streets, the whole family being thrown out onto the street. And this has become a common factor, the common matter. You see people with great commercial knowledge, MCOM, chartered accountancy, company secretary posts, MBA, MCA, so on and so forth. How the financial sector is being affected because of the cheating of so many highly educated people of the universities. This speaks about the deficiency of moral and ethical strength in the education system. Swami Vivekananda rightly said, ancient India used to give greater impetus to value education. Value education must be the priority, because unless and until we bring a change in the micro level of the section, we cannot change the country at the macro level. That is most important. Any change you want to bring, that should be at the level of the schooling. The children must be taught value education. They must be taught that they are human beings. Human being has got moral and ethical strength more than the intellectual strength, so on and so forth. The complete and holistic education is like a full blossomed lotus. The education whatever schools and colleges are providing can be compared to just a petal out of that flower. To consider academic education alone as complete education is another greatest misconception of modern people in our society today. In fact, the real education begins after one passes out from the university. The real education starts after he passes out from the university. Then you may ask a question, what is the purpose of going to university all these years? The answer is very simple. It could enhance our intellectual curiosity, number one. Number two, it has taught as a lesson that education is not confined to a particular period of time, rather it is a lifelong exercise. The present needs of the society are what it should be, education what it should be. We must develop the comprehensive system of education. That is very important. Teachers of highest caliber must be employed in the departments. When we select a soldier, we are very particular about the measurement of his chest. We are very particular about his weight, height, his vision, his hearing, his way of talking, his style of running, so on and so forth. When you subject an young man to undergo more than 25 tests to get selected to the defense of the country, what are the conditions you are putting forth to select a teacher? Is it merely a D.Ed, B.Ed, M.Ed or MSc, PhD certificate? You have so many fraud universities, fraud MPhils, PhDs, which have spoiled the universities today. Getting a MPhil or a PhD certificate, a fraud certificate, is not a big task today in this scenario. There are so many fraud universities. which can give you the fraud certificates. See, this is the pathetic condition. The teachers must have the greatest caliber to serve the system of education. A good teacher must have an insatiable hunger for learning. Character is the fragrance that emanates from the personality of an educated man. Yes, today we have so many flowers grown in the university gardens, but they are all fragranceless. That means to say, they are without character. Kaya, Vacha, Manasa, they are very weak. They have just a certificate to their credit. Knowledge is extremely sacred. Our children are not made to realize this. We hear that nowadays the vice chancellors of great and prestigious universities are being nominated by half-educated politicians. Very, very unfortunate it is. Today the teachers have forgotten that they are not supposed to follow the society. Teachers don't have to follow the rut. We know the whole society had a torchbearer, the teacher. But today, that aspect of sacrifice has disappeared. It is unfortunate that teachers in India, they have lost faith in their profession before the society has lost faith in the teachers. We need millions and millions of teachers to take care of the nation building aspect. The glamour of politicians and the nobility of the teacher mission are poles apart. This profession is best suited for practicing karma yoga, for manifesting the divinity within. A teacher must respect the students. A teacher must develop a loving relationship with the students. He must know the individuals by their name. He must allow the children to struggle to earn knowledge. And he should never judge them harshly. And teacher must always use character of the student as his yardstick. But very unfortunately, this is not prevailing in today's universities. A teacher, more than knowing a subject, he knows some people from the political background for his survival. And it has not stopped at that point. A person who is more indulged in the political issues has become a threat to a small percentage of people who are real teachers in their practices. The true teachers are afraid of the other section of the teachers who are not teachers in their action, but purely the followers of the politicians. The number one principle of democracy is that even a wrong person has the rights. There is a beautiful dictum in Kannada. Kaliyalu asakti ullavane kalisalu yogya. That means to say, Vidya Gurunam Guruhu. A teacher is an ever student. He must update his knowledge every day. He must participate in different conventions, seminars voluntarily, and not out of the compulsion from the management or head of the institution. And many a times, majority of the teachers, they feel very bad to take part in such knowledge enriching conventions. They want to have an easy going. They are highly paid today. My society, my government is paying lakhs and lakhs of rupees to our lecturers and professors. But the salary what they are getting today is inversely proportional to what the knowledge they are shedding to the students that they are teaching in their classrooms. And today, very rarely you come across a few teachers who have realized that library is the paradise for a good reader. No doubt, brilliant students may find many flaws and missing links in their academic syllabus, but a very few teachers will guide our children to pursue their studies further thoroughly by getting addicted themselves to the library studies. Good libraries are there for our help. The habit of reading and the habit of playing games must go parallel to each other. This is what the elders of the society insist us to practice. A book that can guide their life will be an eternal classic. If a teacher is aware of that, then he can guide his children to go through such books. But the word classic, a book which people praise but they don't read. This is what Mark Twain says. That is, many receive advice, only the wise will get benefited by that. In our life's long battle, we may come across a good friend, some amount of money, or a good book. But a good book, if we get at the right time, may also become the gateway to our future. Yes, books are plenty, but the time is very short. We have to choose those books which help us to develop our life in tune with our goals. For that, while choosing good books, we must have the good guidance of our ethical teachers. That is very important. We all know the human mind perverse by nature. Good books are like ideal mothers. A good book is one which directly or indirectly depicts a perfect personality. A person's state of mind can be judged by looking at the book what he has chosen to read and the book he is enjoying. If you can advise children about not choosing debasing literature, perhaps by doing so, the teacher is rendering greatest service to the society and the country at large. Our entire life is a big book. Each year is a new chapter. Each day is a new page. Each hour is a new sentence. Many a times, old people say, we are killing time. But it is not they who are killing time. Rather, time is killing them. Ancient India beautifully depicted certain values about the success of any student in his life. To quote a few, every student must be reality-centered. Any artificiality or superficiality or any pseudo-attitude will not bring us the fruits in the truest sense. We may have information to our credit, but ultimately the knowledge and wisdom aspect, if we are lacking, we become literates and not educated. So, we must be reality-centered in the truest sense. The teacher must teach his students that he should keep up this reality centeredness attitude sincerely. The second aspect is you must accept the self and others with whom you are living. Have faith in yourself and have courage, have the mindset to accept the good from others also. This is another aspect of education. And everyone must be oriented towards problem solving rather than our ego. Egoistic attitude will not solve the problem. If we remain at the ego level, it is out and out unripe ego that will not only spoil our life, it leads to the deterioration of the society at large. But when we keep our ego aside, when we nourish ego, purify it, when we process our ego and make it creative and constructive, it becomes unripe ego. That is another very powerful weapon in our basket, a wonderful arrow in our basket. So, the problem is because of the unripe ego. Once this unripe ego, the raw nature of human, get transformed into ripe ego, no more problems will be prevailing. The next aspect is every student must be encouraged to be spontaneous. And he must be very creative in his attitude. He must have the tendency to even appreciate the solitude. I may be very comfortable in the midst of my friends, my nears and dears, but I must be taught by my elders to enjoy even the solitude also. And I must develop resistance against the social pressures also. I may have the social pressures. I must have the tendency to resist that. That is very important. If at all, if I want to define the word freedom, that way of life which enables me to go in the right path itself is the freedom in the truest sense. I think we don't want anything more than that. When the system and the society allows us to do good work and to move in the right path, that means to say that individual is being blessed with greater amount of freedom. Capable of intimate personal relationship. Man is a social animal. We must have quite a good amount of good relationship with other people. We must be ready to learn from anybody, keeping our ego aside. Even we have lessons to learn from an ant, from an elephant, from a dinosaur, so on and so forth. We must be ready to learn, I told. And finally, our ancient rishis always insist that every individual, since he is a spiritual species, he must have the mystic experience aspect. Every man has got his own internal world. We know the education has got the secular aspect and the spiritual aspect. The secular aspect of the education can serve our needs in the external world, whereas the spiritual aspect within, that speaks about our moral and ethical, our divinity, our innate divinity that should be properly manifested in our day-to-day life. When we can bring a beautiful balance in between these two, then we will be very successful in our aspects. So, before I conclude, I want to give some tidbits, a few in number. I don't want to explain them in detail because it is already late. Our children must be made to know that on the soft bed of luxury, most kingdoms have expired. So never think of only the luxurious life. Whatever we want to enjoy, we have to enjoy, and that enjoyment should be out of our hard work. There is nothing parallel to hard work. That should be the watchword to our children. It is better to understand a little rather than misunderstanding a lot. Our children, they prepare so much information to face their examinations. But it is better to understand a little rather than misunderstanding a lot. And our children must be taught. See, these are the very, very important solutions for the burning issues of modern education. Our children must be taught that they cannot be given freedom. Nobody can give them equality or justice or anything. If they want to be the man in the truest sense, they have to fight for it. There is a word called social service. How much you expect from this service, from the society to serve you? Why do you remain a parasite all through your life? You want to be a parasite 100%? Then what about your individual efforts? Then what is the meaning of the word Uddhared Atman Atmanam? Then what is the guarantee for the word, you are the maker of your own destiny? I can take the horse to the pond, but I can't drink water instead of the horse. I may provide you the food. The government is providing food to the doorsteps. Very unfortunately, the people have lost interest in cultivating their own lands. Earlier, they used to go as laborers to the lands of others and serve there and get a few ₹100 by the time they complete their work in the evening. But today, this project of the government, supplying the food grains to the doorsteps of the common man, I very sincerely tell, it has ruined the work skill, the work ethics of an individual. They have conveniently forgotten, they have ignored their own responsibility of taking care of their own cattle in the house, taking care of their own cultivation, irrigating their own coconut plants, banyan plants. Their own vegetation is being utterly neglected. Very unfortunate it is. The only thing that comes to us without effort is old age. So whatever we desire for, we must be deserve for also. It is the hard work that gets us everything that we really deserve. People are generating more careful. People are generally more careful of the breeds of horses and dogs than of their children. Very unfortunate. This is a burning issue of the modern society. As youngsters, we want to change the world. But as we grow older, we want to change the young. This is a paradox. Everyone wants to change the world. When I am young, I want to change the world. Once I grow old, I want to change the young. But what an amount of change we could successfully achieve is $1 million question. Youngsters must keep in mind that too in the period of this drug addiction, alcoholic addiction, and all such nonsense things. Every youngster must keep in mind that diet is far better than doctors. Diet in our practices, diet in our day-to-day life, diet in our activities, our habitual practices is very important. It is work alone that is the source of all good. Work, work, work should be the watchword for our children. More than the lack of strength, today we are observing the children who have the lack of confidence. Because too many people in the society are thinking of security more than the opportunity. With this attitude, they seem more afraid of life than death. Viduraniti says, all beautiful things need not be good, but all good things are beautiful. Our children need not be mere intellectuals, because an intellect is defined in a very sarcastic way as like this. An intellect is he who uses more words than necessary to convey less information. But intellectuality is the need of the hour. But our children, our youth, must be aware of the different characteristics of this intellectual knowledge. What are those? The intellectual alertness, number one. Discrimination intellect. Third one is determination intellect. Fourth is subtlety intellect. Fifth one, steadiness intellect. Sixth one, maturity intellect. Seventh one, virtue intellect. Next one, simplicity intellect. Last but one, sharpness intellect. And finally, positivity in intellect. See, these are the things that should be known to our youngsters. Very unfortunately, my dear young friends, never be in the company of wicked people and people who are lazy in their attitude. Because spit in the face of a shameless man. When you spit in the face of a shameless man, he will tell you it is raining. Never include yourself in that lot. Beauty is worse than wine, because beauty intoxicates both the holder and the beholder. There is a beautiful dictum in English: to marry a woman for her beauty is like choosing a house for its painting. Beggars cannot be the choosers. A stitch in time saves 9. So proper correction in your attitude must be taken at the right time, must be done. Initiation into a worthy methodology is the need of the hour. Money cannot be everything in everybody's life. The history of the world, beyond doubt, it has taught us that money can be a blessing from heaven or a ticket to the hell also. In the matter of opinion, my dear friends, swim with the current. In the matter of principle, please stand firm as rock. That faith is beneficial which is founded upon the right knowledge, right reason, and is supported by proper evidence. Belief in God is not necessary for salvation. Belief is an accomplishment of right knowledge. The difference between a great man and an ordinary man, you should know. A great man keeps calm even in dangerous situations. A great man, he has the power to say the right thing in the midst of so many people. A great man, in prosperity, he shows forgiveness. In battle, he shows prowess. A great man will not cease the desire to learn. A great man is always intent upon doing good. That's why great saints say, try to live with those who have mastered their minds. If you cannot live with them, at least think of them, because mind controls mind. Every youngster has got two vital problems: the fear of failure and the pure fear of criticism. But we must give our best in a situation. We must not wait like a street beggar for a little prize or glory or success. Right living requires right understanding. Whether our inclination is towards spiritual or secular, we cannot neglect the moral values. Two more sentences to conclude. I want to quote the words of Albert Georgi, who discovered vitamin C in the year 1937, and he was awarded the Nobel Prize. He says, snakes can grow only by bursting their skins. Snakes can grow only by bursting their skins. Molting process is really a painful one. And if it doesn't happen, the snake will die. Likewise, mankind grows by bursting the outgrowth skin of antiquated ideas, thinking, and institutions. Very beautiful utterance. The last utterance of Dr. Alexis Carrel from his book, Man the Unknown, is worth analyzing. In man, things which are not measurable are more important than those which are measurable. So the things which are not measurable, they comes under the category of spiritual education. The things that are measurable, they come under the category of secular education. But we should know that the innate strength provided by the spiritual education will make us the true citizens, true individuals, true personalities in the aspect of the society also. So these are the things what ancient India really insisted every young man of this country to imbibe. Now it is a great challenge before our teachers, our universities, to make our children the packet of energy, the packet of self-confidence, self-respect. Unless and until you make them self-confident, self-esteemed, self-vigilant, we cannot take it for granted that we are preparing the citizens for our society. My dear friends, it is really already late. We have to realize the real purpose of education and start working on those ethical lines. Here, more than any department, I very sincerely tell you, the success of any education minister, the success of any chief minister of any state, or the prime minister of any country depends not on whom he chooses as the revenue minister, excise minister, or the home minister. More than that, whom he chooses as the education minister. Education minister is the powerhouse for all the departments. Education department will provide the human resource to every department of the country, and more it becomes moral and ethical. The country will be in the safest hands of the genuine citizens, the genuine officers and the rulers. I thank Dr. Mishraji and our IGNOU institution for extending me an invitation to be a part of this webinar today to analyze the aspects of the education that is prevailing in today's society against what it should be. Once again, I thank all our organizers for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this webinar. I wish all of you a very meaningful and great success in your future endeavors. Thank you very much. Jai Ram Krishna.